A lot has changed in the NFL landscape this offseason. Players moving teams, free agency, the draft. It's been crazy, and OTAs are now done. So, as we move into the offseason here, we're going to take a look at some older faces in some brand new places for the first time, guys who have changed teams. So, stay tuned. Welcome into the double FU, the FU times 2. I am Jeremy Shulman. Let's see if I get it right. This shouldn't be that way, but it is. Jesse Moeller at jmoeller05. Welcome today. We are talking about old faces and new places. We talked a bit about this in free agency beforehand, but now that things have solidified, thankfully, hardly any injuries, only a few arrests, but the NFL draft is also behind us, so we kind of have an idea of how things are shaking out. So we'll talk about some guys who are finally in a new place for the first time in their career and how that could affect their fantasy impact. But first, Jesse, how's it going?
I'm doing good. We were concocting some funky ideas like earlier today. Like, all right, what are we gonna hit on? And we're like, you know what? We gotta touch on these guys that are in the new position. And ideally we're gonna hit on the guys that are impact, but even guys that are, like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, or maybe like running back 2, running back 3. We're talking about the guys that are most likely to make an impact for your fantasy team. By the way, tight end, it's looking rough, so it's gonna be a short section on tight end, but with running back and wide receiver, there's a lot of fun guys to talk about. So I'm excited to hop in and do what we do, chop it up on the FFU, baby.
Here we go. All right. So let's jump in and let's talk about running backs. Running backs are the most fun position to talk about, at least in terms of free agency this year. We know that the NFL draft class was pretty poor by all standards. We're all a bit hyped on some of these guys right now because it's still rookie fever season. But we're going to talk about some of these tried and true old guys here. So I'm going to throw out a few names. And Jesse, you tell me who you want to talk about first. All right. We've got Saquon Barkley. Now in Philadelphia, moving on from New York. We have Derrick Henry moving on from Tennessee and now in Baltimore. We have Josh Jacobs now in Green Bay, leaving Las Vegas. We have Joe Mixon finally out of Cincinnati and into Houston, and Gus Edwards, who has moved on from Baltimore and who is in Los Angeles. Zach Moss also belongs on this list, but he moved around a few times. So, and we've talked about him plenty in our love for him. But Jesse, of those 5 names, who do you want to talk about first?
Let's go talk about the big dog, the guy that has the highest ADP. And when I say big dog, it's normally Derrick Henry, but the guy with the highest ADP among everybody is Saquon Barkley. So I think we should talk about him. And I don't know, Aaron. Yep. By the way, just for those of you paying attention to the show, Aaron dropped a nice little article on the website that you shall check out for those interested in Scott Fishbowl, because we have some ADPs with mock drafts from around like the industry, a fun place to look at. So guys that were fading, guys that are high on lower. Go check it out on our website. It's a really cool article by Aaron. Unfortunately, not here to join us, but it's a cool little piece.
Well, and a really good point about this and something to pay attention to is that running back is the position that you want to target early in the Scott Fishbowl. There's a ridiculous amount of points for, I think it's 0.5 per first down for running backs and 0.25 per, per touch or per carry. Right. Yeah, so massive values there for running backs and Scott Fishbowl, especially a bunch of these guys. So, Jesse, let's jump back in and talk about Saquon Barkley. How you feeling about him in Philadelphia?
It's interesting is the way I'll phrase it. Like, I'm excited, but I'm also worried about how much workload he's going to see, because he was the everything for the Giants. He's not going to be the everything for the Eagles. That's not how, even with DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders previously, he's a better version of those guys. But in the roles they had, they never saw what we saw Kyron Williams do with the Rams. Like, that's not how they treat their running backs in the situation. So I'm curious for Saquon, because when we compare him to Henry in a minute, we can talk about him. Like, add in the fact he's likely not going to be getting all of the goal line work, which is what he was getting with New York, because they have Jalen Hurts, who has had 30 rushes inside the 5-yard in the last 2 years. I said that right, 30. So basically he's averaging 15 attempts the last 2 years where he's just bowling ball. Like, he's a giant individual, so it makes sense. So I'm really excited. I think the floor is super high. I do wonder how high the ceiling is. That's my more question for Saquon. Like, I've heard people saying he's top 3 back this year, and I'm like, I don't see that. So Where are you kind of at with Saquon? Are you riding the wave of just enthusiasm or joy, or are you a little bit more of a Debbie Downer with Saquon with the Eagles, considering the workload maybe diminished?
No, I love Saquon. I think Sirianni and this group of coaches and even this group of players, they're just heady individuals. I don't think there's really going to be an issue with Jalen Hurts stealing touchdowns. I think I think if anything, Saquon Barkley is going to be stealing kind of some looks in the passing game, especially around the goal line, where they could be more conservative with an either Hurts or Barkley approach. I mean, who are you going to stop in this case? This is like a Lamar Derrick Henry on the goal line, even though Jalen Hurts has a ton of weight on Lamar, right? This is like a Lamar Derrick Henry outside the 20, right? This is inside the 20 with Hurts and Saquon. Who are you going to stop? I think it's just going to be absolute mayhem down there in the trenches. The one issue, and this is what Aaron's bringing up, is there is no Jason Kelce here. He's retired. The perennial all-pro center for the Philadelphia Eagles is now gone. They've moved, I think, their guard to center. His name is failing me right now. If I see it, I'd know it. But it's
Jurgens.
Cam Jurgens. Cam Jurgens. Yep. Yeah. So, there's continuity there, but you're not necessarily going to replace a talent like Jason Kelce at the center position. So what that does and how the line shakes out, I think could be slightly difficult early. I don't think it's really going to matter. Will it matter for the tush push and Jalen Hurts? I don't really think so, but I do think that the Eagles are going to try to move away from this slightly, right? It's effective, incredibly effective. It works for them, but we don't need to be risking Jalen Hurts all the time in close situations. We don't need to have like a Tank Dell situation with Devonta Smith, in the middle there. So let's just make sure that as much as possible, we're pounding the ball. And now we have two hammers instead of kind of one. Rashad Penny was supposed to be that last year. He wasn't. He just kind of evaporated for fantasy purposes. So now we have Saquon Barkley here who can actually pound it in. I'm not worried about Barkley at all. And I think that he and Hurts can thrive in terms of rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with Barkley is similar to Ken Walker. He's been very much a boom bust rusher in his entire career, where he's willing to take the negative legs for the big gain. And he's kind of like evened it out a little bit where he's not as explosive as he used to be. He's not the freak athlete due to the injuries, things of that nature with him. But he was second in the NFL in tackled yards for a loss. That's the type of rusher he is. So there's going to be times where you kind of have to live with the negative with the positive of Barkley, because he's not, I wouldn't say he's a top 5 rusher in the NFL. I think he's a good rusher, but as far as rushers, he's still just never been complete rusher. That's just never who he's been. So he's relied a little bit more on athleticism, and he's aging out. He's kind of shifting his role into a more traditional rusher. So I think with the Eagles and their offensive line, this is the best offensive line he's had in, as far as I can remember, maybe his entire career. Even with the loss of Kelce, I still think it's an upgrade. So him doing less, I think, gives him just a higher floor, because the situation, everything around him elevates. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So with Barkley, I think there's no way, barring an injury, he finishes outside the top 12 running backs. I just don't think that's in his range of outcomes. I think he's borderline in that back end of RB1, RB6, RB12 range, depending on how touchdowns go. And that's compared to Henry. I'm much more worried about his touchdowns just because of how the Eagles have used Jalen Hurts, or how the Bills have used Josh Allen with these running backs. They significantly take out a portion of those rushing attempts, which is why I'm more bullish on Henry with the touchdowns. I think Henry could be the league leader in touchdowns this year. I don't see that happening for Saquon Barkley. Maybe I'm wrong, but until it changes for him, that's the thing that worries him. Maybe they're just all right, we're not going to do it, Jalen Hurts. We're just going to give it to Barkley. And if that happens, then I'll completely be wrong. But everything we've seen from Hurts is because he's a freaking giant human. This was Cam Newton back a few years ago, right? These giant quarterbacks, it's I want to give them the ball because they're bigger than every linebacker on the field. So it's interesting with them. I just think he's a really high floor. I think you know what you're getting. I just more worried about the ceiling than anything else. And it's not a bad problem to have. So if we're talking about ADP, that's why I'd prefer someone like Henry as a Saquon, because I can get him around and a half 2 rounds later. But yeah, Barkley's a stud. I know I'm being a little bit of a Debbie Downer on him. I just think if we're chasing ceiling, he's probably not the best bet. But if you want the floor play, where you can get him early round 2, that's fine. You know what you're getting. He's going to get 250, maybe 300 plus touches. It'll be a good season for him no matter what, I would say.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with Caleb here. Caleb loves him some Barkley because of two other additional reasons, Jesse. They are Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Philadelphia drastically improved their pass defense this year.
Sure.
You know what that means? They're going to be ahead even more than they were over the last couple of seasons in games, which means they're going to look to pound the rock in the fourth quarter. Is that always going to be Saquon? Maybe not. Maybe they're going to be up so big that they're going to save him down the stretch. But because they'll be able to progressively lock down some of these lesser teams earlier, Barkley could see a ton of run in the second and third quarters, especially with Jalen Hurts running those RPOs. I love those two picks specifically for this offense and this rushing offense. I don't know if I love it for Devonta Smith, but he's an exceptional talent, so he'll be okay for fantasy. Right. We'll see. Saquon Barkley, I think, has top 5 upside this season. And you always talk about playing dynasty in 2 to 3 year windows. I think Barkley is the perfect 2 to 3 year window guy. I think he's got 2 elite seasons probably left in him at his age, given his injury status. And those 2 seasons couldn't come on a better offense. So I love this move. I think we should probably talk about Derrick Henry as well. We love Derrick Henry. And I think some have soured on him just because of his age, but he keeps getting it done, Jesse. Like, this guy is, he's the one. He's Neo, right? He's the exception to the rule. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about Neo here in the Baltimore backfield? And hopefully, knock on wood, finally a healthy season for a Baltimore running back.
Yeah, that's the whole one thing. Like, injuries, they bit him in the ass last year. They could bite him again this year. He's old, right? He's pushed like 30-year running back. Like, he's not young. So the whole thing is, if you're going to buy into an outlier, I think Derrick Henry's the perfect outlier you buy into, because he's not your traditional running back. He's always broken the mold as far as it's gone. And this is even back to when he was splitting work in the freaking Matt LaFleur offense. I'm still never going to forgive Matt LaFleur for having him split work with Deion Lewis, where they're basically getting 200 running attempts, splitting it. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? This is the dumbest thing I've heard. But to his, like, he's always been really efficient in what he's done. And he really hasn't diminished. The one thing that really crumbled for him the last couple of years is the offensive line. And that really diminished him. But his skill set, like, he was still top 8, or sorry, he's 9th in yards after contact created. He was really good, missed tackles forced, like breakaway run rate. That's still all there. So you put him in one of the better offensive situations. I've been saying this since I've found this out. The Ravens basically are first in yards before contact created for their running backs. So, hello, you get Lamar, you put him together, and then, the whole issues with the touchdowns. I don't see them giving it to Lamar, because why would you give it to Lamar over Henry? Lamar's not Jalen Hurts size. He's a lot smaller, and he's dealt with injuries in his past too, so they want to keep Lamar fresh. So it's like, let's give it to this giant human we got back here, just going to dump truck fools at the goal line. It's like, yeah, so I that's why I think Derrick Henry could lead the league in rushing touchdowns. I think that's entirely possible in range of outcomes, because we saw Gus, who is not as good as Henry. He was double-digit touchdowns. We've seen Dobbins and Gus in the past both push double-digit touchdowns with this offense. I just think it's all ramping up for a really good year for Henry. The one thing is just injuries and age. Like, that's my only main concern. Outside of that, like, I think the floor is super high, and I think he could actually be a top 5-ish running back, because touchdowns, like, they're super valuable. So if you're going to be a league leader in touchdowns, like, you're going to get an edge because of how that goes. Now, he doesn't have the same rushing upside of the the receiving upside, but, like, I'm not too worried about that. You know what you're getting with Henry. Like, you get maybe 20, 25, catches. If you call that good, you take it and you run to the bank. So I've been all above him, and he's going 7th round in dynasty startups. I'm like, dude, this is too low. Stop paying this man. Like, I get it, but like, you're talking about 2 to 3 year window. Like, same thing with Henry. He's under contract for 2 years with they're going to feature him. It's going to be really good. So I don't know, unless you're rebuilding, I don't see the point in fading Henry this season. It just seems like it's going over the top. He's going a round and a half behind, like we talked about Taylor and Saquon. Like, he's going well behind those guys in redraft. So personally, like, I would much rather take him in the 3rd than Saquon early second. That's just how I would view it. So I know you've been, like, pretty bullish on Henry too. Is there any, like, other concerns you have for him? Or are you like with me? You're just like, no, we're just riding with the big dog.
No, zero concerns for Henry. You always worry about health, right? You always worry how that can impact him, but we have a pretty good run blocking line. And this stat that Aaron's thrown out to you, yards per carry in Baltimore has been insane. It's why we loved J.K. Dobbins before the injury. It's why we loved Gus Edwards, despite him just kind of being an average NFL back. It's why we were excited about Keaton Mitchell last season before he completely shattered everything in one of his knees. So, hopefully he comes back. It's why Justice Hill might once again be viable. Crazy, ridiculous yards per carry. But the reason for this is Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar Jackson is the guy who, and Aaron's talking about it here too. This is the thing, right? Yes, sure. They're similar in size, but Lamar has the blazing speed. Jalen Hurts only averaged 3.85 yards per carry last season. He's got a lot of those tush-push 1-2 yard carries in there. He can run the rock. We're not concerned about that, but Lamar is at a different level. It's like comparing, I don't know, Jalen Waddle, who's a great NFL wide receiver, to Tyreek Hill. There is no comparison, but these two guys are kind of great in their own right. But Lamar just has that other gear. Lamar Jackson last season, which was the second lowest of his career, averaged 5.5 yards per carry on his own. So, defenses cannot stop this guy when he chooses to run the football. And so he's just creating massive space and confusion in the defense. And Derrick Henry is going to be the type of back that's just going to grab it and run downhill, and whoever's in his way, like, look out, there's going to be gaping holes. It's going to be like phenomenal to witness Derrick Henry in this Baltimore system next to Lamar Jackson. I just pray for health for both of those guys this season because it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. I like both of them. I think Saquon in Dynasty is 1 or 2 spots ahead of Henry for me. I have to pull it up. Let's see. Saquon is
while you're looking
further down.
I'll talk about
so I have
Henry. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have Saquon 6. Henry's a little bit further down, 14th, but I haven't updated these in about a week or two. I'm going to need to move him up a few spots. I don't like that. I'm putting him as an RB1 still. It could be it's another season. It could be another 2 seasons for Derrick Henry. We'll see. But what were you going to say about Barkley?
So I was going to say Lamar gained weight in 2022, put him up to 220 pounds. He was at 215 last year. He's specifically said this year he's slimmed down to like 205. So he's a lot smaller than he has been in the past, because he didn't feel as explosive. He wants to be like the more explosive what we saw previously, right? So he wants to be the guy that's the lightning bug out of the backfield, really doing those breakaway runs. And I think Henry allows him to do that, because you have, like, I know we talk about Henry, like, with age stuff. You have to focus on him. Like, you have to focus on his defense, because you can't just give that up. And interestingly enough, even though Gus Edwards was in the system, he averaged 4.1 yards per carry last year. Henry averaged 4.2 yards in Tennessee last year. That's the difference in talent of these two guys. So you're putting him in that situation. Like, both these guys are going to be hyper efficient. They're just really good run scheme. They both fit it. Like, that's why I'm super excited for those guys. And, like, I mean, they're just two of the best, like, individual rushing talents we've seen the past 20 years, probably, like, the things they do. And now they're on the same team. It's like, all right, it's just fireworks party. Like, let's go. Fire it up. I'm super excited to see it.
Completely agree. We're going to move on from the running back position. We've talked more about Jacobs, Mixon, and Gus on other episodes. So go over to YouTube and check those out if you're interested, especially in the last week or two. But we're going to move on to old wide receivers in a new place. Again, wide receivers who've moved to a new team for the first time in their careers. Of course, the big name is Keenan Allen, moving from LA all the way to the windy city of Chicago. We have Gabe Davis moving from Buffalo to Jacksonville, so going the other direction in terms of temperature. We have Jerry Jeudy moving from the mile-high city of Denver to Cleveland. We have Diontae Johnson, who we are absolutely in love with, moving from Pittsburgh to Carolina, and Tyler Boyd, who moved from Cincinnati to Tennessee. Jesse, who should we start with here? There are some names who we love and some names who we don't. So who do you want to talk about?
Yeah, we need to take Tyler Boyd off the list, because I don't give a flying what about Tyler Boyd in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's hard
Sorry,
enough
no
for the
Tyler Boyd
guys.
here today.
Sorry, Tyler Boyd. Like, I'm sorry, buddy. Yeah, like the third option at maybe fourth option in that offense. Like, on the Will Levis offense, like, I'm good with that. I think let's focus on the biggest one. Let's talk about Keenan Allen, because his ADP in redraft is still pretty high. He is the first Bear going off the board. Now, if you're drafting these Bears, is he the first wide receiver you're taking? Or are you going to take DJ Moore? Or are you going to take Rome Odunze a little bit later?
I'm taking DJ Moore. and I'm not touching either of these other guys. And I think the biggest reason for that for me is because DJ Moore has youth on his size. I think he's just on his side. He's just as talented as Keenan Allen, although obviously they win differently. You know, Caleb Williams is a rookie quarterback. Granted, he's the 101, but I don't expect him to support more than one pass catcher here. Keenan Allen met Caleb Williams at his workouts, you know, pre-draft, as you know, with all the speculation, trying to get in there, trying to be the one. I don't think it's going to matter. I just think at this stage in his career, he might be the, you know, the check down 100 reception guy. But if he's giving you 100 receptions for 900 yards and, you know, 5 touchdowns, I'm not interested in Keenan Allen at cost. I'd much rather have the more explosive DJ Moore. And I'm not betting on Rome here, but I know you're singing a different tune for Rome Odunze. That is your boy. So why don't you tell me how you're breaking these receivers down?
You're goddamn right. That's my boy. With Keenan Allen, my whole worry is I expect him to be one coming off field in 2 wide receiver sets. So that limits his overall routes he's running because, like, I know we love Keenan Allen, but like he was more able to take advantage of a really poor situation in the Chargers. We talk about the wide receivers they have. No one's hyping up Josh Palmer. No one's hyping up Quentin Johnson after the stuff he did last year, right? So it's a situation where like Keenan Allen's capable, like he's still getting dominant targets, and like congrats to him for that. But now he's in a situation where once Mike Williams was gone, there's nobody else. He's coming to like, this is probably like the best wide receiver room he's been a part of in his entire career. And he's kind of aging that point where they've moved him more into the slot where he's always been a slot receiver, but he's playing more in the slot. Like, I just don't trust him to win on the outside when I have DJ Moore and I have Rome Odunze, who are more what I will say complete wide receivers that can do a little bit of everything. So I'm just worried. I would rather take DJ Moore at cost, or I would rather take Rome Odunze at cost, because Rome Odunze is wide receiver 43 in redraft. Keenan Allen's wide receiver 27. That's like, you're really pushing it with that. If I'm taking a slot wide receiver, give me Chris Godwin rounds later than Keenan Allen. Like, I just don't. And you talk about him being a rookie rookie quarterback. Like, how is he able to support all these guys on the top of it too? That's another thing. Like we kind of talk about. If we're expecting CJ Stroud numbers, like we're just going to be disappointed. That's just not what rookie quarterbacks do. So yeah, like I would just go for the cheapest third option, specifically just because of how good of a talent I think Rome Odunze is. I think people are miscasting the whole JSN situation. Rome Odunze is not JSN. Like, he can play everywhere. JSN like has not shown that. Maybe he can do that this year, moving outside of the slot. But like the Seahawks really just, they nerfed him hard last year. I don't expect Chicago to do that with Rome Odunze. So I think it's a little bit apples and oranges situation. So I'm big on Rome Odunze. I'll happily take him at cost. And yeah, like we saw what DJ Moore did. He's right in his prime window. So like you should expect DJ Moore to be the one until we see otherwise, is the way I would treat it. So he has the connectivity, like they know him there. And then, you know, Keenan Allen will be the guy that does some good things for you. And you can, I think he's more of a best ball receiver probably, where you can have some good weeks. It's just, I don't think he's going to be consistent with him. So that's why I'm fading him. And as sad as it is, because he's been such a target magnet throughout his career, just going to be like, you know what, Keenan Allen, I appreciate what you did, but I'm going to let other people draft you at cost this year. It's not for me.
Yeah. Totally agree with you here. And let's move on to one more wide receiver. We could probably do 2 here. Let's squeeze in 2 wide receivers quickly. We'll profess our love for Diontae Johnson in a minute, but I think we have to talk about, and let's lump them into one player, Gabe, Jeudy, Davis, Jerry. I don't know what you want to call him. You can call him who cares, because like these guys are moving to different teams, but I'm not buying the hype on either of these guys. Can you tell me why we hate Gabe Davis and Jerry Jeudy in under a minute, Jesse?
Well, the thing with Judy's always been overhyped. Like, people were expecting him to be this monster. Like, people are treating him like he was this stud wide receiver coming out, and that's not really what he's ever been. And it's the draft capital, but it's like, it wasn't early draft capital, right? Is this kind of where we're getting the Zay Flowers, those type of guys, where it's like, you got to show it to me, man. But he was from Alabama wide receiver. They have the pedigree, so it's all that fun stuff. He just never lived up to expectations, so that's why we kind of hate him. I think Gabe Davis, it makes more sense of the fit with Trevor Lawrence. That's why I like Lawrence this year. It's because you're taking freaking 2 outside wide receivers who stretch the field vertical, and you have Lawrence, who's a really good downfield passer. That's why I think it works out for them all. Like, I think Gabe Davis fits a need. With Jeudy, I think he just hurts the other wide receivers. Like, you have Amari Cooper. You're going to have Jeudy be the second. You're going to have freaking, I know we saw Charles Tillman. I don't care about Tillman. Like, whatever, man. Forget that. And Elijah Moore. Like, Elijah Moore wasn't even in the blurb when they were talking about wide receivers in this year. So I was like, yeah, sorry, it's over. Elijah Moore. So, like, I think he could be the third option in there. But, like, Deshaun Watson's been terrible the last 3 years. So, I mean, good luck. Like, good luck. Maybe it happens, but I don't know, man. Like, they need to show us some of that. But I'm just, not touch those guys. Like, I don't want to do that personally.
Yeah. If Jerry Jeudy succeeds this year, I will hate myself because I've been on the Jerry Jeudy bandwagon since he was drafted. I'm recently recovering. I'm a recovering Jerry Jeudy truther. I'm completely off. If he goes off, fine. I'm going to eat it. I don't care. I don't want anything to do with anyone not named Amari Cooper and David Njoku in Cleveland. That includes the backfield, who, if you can guess right, it will be profitable, but I'm not playing that game. Gabe Davis, they just traded for Gabe Davis, and then they drafted a guy who plays the same role, who's better than Gabe Davis ever hopes to be. And they still have Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, who are going to soak up targets. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. So that's going to really kind of nuke any of their value. We're going to talk about Diontae Johnson, but first we're going to talk quickly about Rhamondre Stevenson, who just inked a 4-year, $36 million extension. Why are we surprised here? There should be no surprise here. Rhamondre Stevenson is good. I don't care about Antonio Gibson. I don't care about how bad this situation is. The situation was bad last year and the last 2 years with Mac Jones, and Stevenson at least treaded water and survived. He even thrived 2 years ago in New England. So I'm not concerned about it. Now you got Brissett / Drake May. You have a competent offense. You don't have a defensive coordinator running your offense. You don't have a reject head coach running your offense. You don't have the, Bill Belichick's dog typing up game plans and stuff. So it's a completely new day here in New England, but Rhamondre Stevenson has some tread on these tires that, it's vastly overestimated his demise, I think, this offseason. People are so out on him. I think he's RB 24, 5, 6 in redraft, and even in dynasty ADP startup right now. Ridiculous. It never should have been there. He should be a top 20 back. I don't know what people are doing, but what are you thinking about this signing with Rhamondre?
Yeah, I think it works out really well because we heard them hyping him up a little bit ago, where they were like, we think he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. They clearly back that up. That the way I'm looking at the contract, there's some funny money in that contract, so I don't expect him to see all of that money. But with the $17 million guaranteed, that means it's pushing 2 years out, so it's likely a 2-year deal. So, and if we're talking about running backs, who cares about 3 years from now, because that's impossible to predict anyways. But I was just doing a show earlier this week where I was hyping up Rhamondre because he was going in the 8th round, running back 21 in Dynasty. And I was like, dude, he's a buy. He's going with Kamara. He's going with Javonte. He's going with all these older guys where these guys are being inefficient. We've seen him be good. And my issue with Gibson is Gibson's just not consistent enough to trust. So he's going to spell him. But people are still hyping up Gibson based on what they thought he was. And I'm like, dude, Rhamondre is actually that guy in a good situation, in an improved situation. I would not be shocked to see him be an RB1 this year. Like that, he's going to get volume. The quarterback situation is improving. The talent around him is improving. Last year was just abysmal for everybody. It was just awful. And he had Zeke Elliott kind of punch things like that. I think he rebounds positively. He's healthy. He'll show that he's a good back. 2 years ago, he's one of the better backs in the NFL. I think we're getting a lot closer to that when you look at the efficient metrics. The injury had a lot to do with this situation. So get in while you can before this kind of boosts up his value, because he's likely going to rise a round or two in redraft. Same thing with Dynasty ADP. It's probably going to skyrocket. So if you were buying him previously, you made the right call because he was discounted. Then maybe you want to go see if you clip him, right? That's how it is with Dynasty. But overall, I think that's a good win for him and the Patriots. That helps your young quarterback, right? You can help grow and progress with that running back. So I like that a lot for them.
Yeah, or sell him. I have Rhamondre in a few teams. I bought him low. I rode him, and now I'm going to sell him off of this news. And not because I think he's going to be bad, but I think he's just going to be one of these stuck in the middle average backs who is great as a RB2-3 on your dynasty team. But if you can package him and a T Higgins and upgrade to an elite wide receiver or an elite running back, I'm happy to do that, right? Take a couple of these middling guys who still have this name cachet, who just signed some deals, and go get yourself a Derrick Henry for 2 seasons, and maybe with a third or a second on top, because of the youth angle. So it's very possible that you can upgrade with Stevenson. That being said, if you want to buy Stevenson now, you shouldn't be buying for a first, but I wouldn't mind throwing out kind of a second round pick as a contender in need of a running back, assuming it's going to be a late second. I wouldn't hate that. I don't know if anyone's going to accept that at this point. I'm certainly not paying 2 seconds for Stevenson, but let's say you're in need of a running back. What would you do? What would you pay to buy Stevenson at this point?
I'd be fine paying the same cost that it would for Henry or Mixon or those guys. So like early second, if I'm a certified contender, and by certified contender, I mean I have like Bijan, I have another like a Najee, I have those guys already on the roster. I'm kind of insulated at other position. I'm not buying guys like this if I'm not a contender, because what they do is they stick you right in the middle. So if you're like a team that's rebuilding, continue to rebuild him, or now sell his ass. But if you're a contender, like we talked about being a certified contender, yeah, you can go buy him. If you want to wait it out, though, like I think the market will likely cool after we get closer to redraft. Everyone's like, oh yeah, it's still the Patriots, blah blah blah. But like the thing with Rhamondre, he averaged 16 touches per game the last 2 seasons. He's dealt with injuries last year, so he's likely going to be in that 15-ish touch per game, which gives you 280 if you project it for a full season. That's not bad. Like that's a good amount of work. It just depends with the receiving options, like how many receptions can he get? Because I don't expect Gibson to do that, because Gibson sucks in pass pro too, by the way. So he's likely not going to be better than that either. So yeah, I think he's more than likely one of the cheaper options you can buy for the production level you're going to get. Like I would much prefer him to Javonte and like those guys. Like I don't want to do the Javonte stuff. No, thank you. So in that range of player, if the price on Henry is too cheap or too expensive, or Mixon too expensive, go see if it's Rhamondre, because he still has stank on him. And I think that's the thing where it takes time for that to go off. So yeah, like go offer that price, see what happens, because I think you can offer a similarly ranked player. If we look at dynasty costs right now, like it's not that expensive. So like you go look in the range of wide receivers, we're talking about Terry McLaurin, we're talking about Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk. I'm fine selling those guys straight up for Rhamondre, because I think Rhamondre is likely to give me more production than those guys. So, make the move if you ever, you need it. It's easy. So that's personally how I would treat the running back situation with those guys.
Yep. Love it. We're going to move back into wide receivers and profess our love for Diontae Johnson now, a Carolina Panther. Jesse, how many targets will Diontae Johnson get in 2024, and why is that number start with a 2 and end with 100?
You know that the meme of Lindsay Lohan, it's like the limit does not exist. Yeah, this is what we're talking about with targets with Diontae, right? Like it's just an insane amount. Like I know we talk about Xavier Legette, we talk about Jakevian Sanders. Those dudes are rookies, by the way. Adam Thielen is one of the oldest wide receivers in the NFL. He was getting volume because he was forced into volume because of how bad the wide receiver room was last year. Now you're bringing in someone who's a competent target earner. It's going to be like, sorry, Adam Thielen, do I really want to give you this 5-yard check down? Or I can give a 10-yard pass to Diontae and actually do something good with it. So realistically, I think Bryce Young is going to hyper-focus. He'll be pushing 30% target share plus. In that offense, like we could see 150 targets, no problem. Now, you need Bryce Young to improve, but like I think he's got a high floor and he could be the wide receiver 8 he was 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. Like I could see something like that happening. So yeah, I'm all in Diontae. If he got 200 targets, oh my God, it'd be incredible. Oh, I'd be so excited. So I know if we're looking at like our rankings, like I think in redraft, I'm 40 spots above on Diontae of where he's going, because he's going substantially. I don't understand what we're doing. Where do you have Diontae in your dynasty rankings, by the way? I'm curious.
Dynasty. Let's see. Pulling it up here. This is full PPR. I can't find him. I'm digging.
He's my wide receiver 24 in dynasty. right ahead of a few of like right with
Same,
Zay Flowers
actually.
and those guys. Yeah. Ooh, nice.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I was looking at
right above Tank Dell, actually.
Yes, sir. That's a fun discussion, because Tank Dell's youth, he's good, but Deontay's gonna give you the target. So I think with Diontae, like he's a good buy at cost right now. Like he's getting steamed up, but like, is he ever gonna crest into the 4th round in dynasty? No, I doubt it, because he's already kind of older. So if you're buying him now, what you're buying is you're treating him like an aging veteran for production. So like the way we look at these guys, it's like just go buy for the production. Don't mess around. Because I'm trying to find him in dynasty rankings. I have to look this up a second. Sorry, I'm gonna stall for a second. But I mean, yeah, he's 48. Why is he 48 in dynasty? Get the fuck out of here. That's absurd. Like, go buy at that cost.
The sleeper projections are pretty ridiculous. It's like 700 yards, 68 receptions. No, Diontae is going to be approaching 1,000 yards. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he's done it almost every season. Let's just take a look at Carolina's situation last season. 137 targets to Adam Thielen. He caught 100 balls for 1,014 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think that's Diontae Johnson's floor. And I think he's going to have a lot more yardage, a few more touchdowns, and I'd say at least 20 more targets. He's going to be one of the highest targeted receivers in the NFL. But number 2, Jonathan Mingo with 85 targets. That number needs to come down. You can slot Adam Thielen for 85 targets this season. That's fine. Number 3, DJ Chark. I don't even think he's there anymore. Who knows where the hell DJ Chark is? Who cares where DJ Chark is? It doesn't matter. He's not going to work here anymore. That's for sure. Number 4 in targets is Chuba Hubbard with 44. Miles Sanders was 5th, 41. Terrace Marshall, Tommy Tremble. Obviously, this team had a need. They went out and addressed that need. But if you think Xavier Legette is getting 100 targets in year 1, you are sorely mistaken. This guy's more of a project than you think he is, although he's a fun project and he's a hyper athletic project and he could be a monster eventually. But this is not DK Metcalf coming out, right? This is not it's not AJ Brown. This is not a polished wide receiver who only has a few things to tweak to become great. So he's going to take time. Whether we see Mingo or Marshall progress, which I think at this point is probably unlikely, it's the Diontae Johnson show. And it's Johnson and Brooks who that offense is going to run through. No one else is capable of funneling your offense through, is capable enough to funnel your offense through at the NFL level. And, even with kind of the new offense in place and the scheme and everything they're going to do, and they're going to fix Bryce Young and Dave Canales, and we're excited. Who knows what the hell is going to happen here? One thing is for sure, Diontae Johnson will get a crap ton of targets.
Yeah, even if you include last year's injury plague season from 2020 through 2023, if we project for 17 games, he's averaged 152 targets, 93 receptions for 1,026 yards and 6 touchdowns. So if you're baking that in as his average median range of projection, maybe you go a little bit lower because there's some injuries, so you say 130. If he hits the ceiling, he could push 160, 170 targets. So if he does that for you, that's how he truly becomes that high-end wide receiver where you're like, dude, I got this guy in this 7th, 8th round redraft league, and he absolutely smashed for me. So I think the median range of outcomes, if we do the median projection, he's still really good wide receiver 2. And then if he hits the ceiling, wide receiver 1. So worst case, he's wide receiver 23. Freaking Thielen last year was wide receiver 17. So I think there's a range of outcomes where he's really good. It's just, you're going to get targets with this guy. Targets are what we count on. It's a really important stat to pay attention to those. And if Dave Canales fixes Bryce Young, you have the number 1 wide receiver attached to Bryce Young, and it's I got myself a stud wide receiver for the next 3 years. That's just I just don't get his cost. It doesn't make sense to me. My brain can't comprehend it. And maybe I'm just a dumb idiot, but I still can't figure it out.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. And you have Brian Burns left town. They dealt him. Why not? At least Derek Brown is still in town, but you're replacing him with Jadeveon Clowney, Kayvon Chason. I mean, they went out and they got what's his name, DJ Wonham. Right. I really like Wonham, but he's not the level of player that Brian Burns was. I mean, just complete game wrecker. This defense didn't get better. Right. They went out and they took drafted some guys in the later rounds. They have a good, highly sought after defensive coordinator here in Evero, who's been getting the hype. But I just don't think this defense has what it takes to kind of put it all together here. And that's going to lead to more opportunities to pass the football. So I really like Bryce Young this season. He's one of those guys that I'll take a bet on in the last round of a redraft league. Him and Will Levis, I'll just take the bet on them because if they hit, it's going to be really interesting. Dynasty leagues, those 2 guys specifically, also in startups, are highly undervalued right now. You can get them cheap as throw-ins in deals. You could throw out an early 2nd round pick and probably get one of those 2 guys in a dynasty league. Why not? They're a quarterback and super flex, ridiculous value. And if they hit, they're going to hit big. And if they hit big, there's going to be guys who benefit from that, namely Calvin Ridley and and of course Diontae Johnson.
Yeah, I think it's
Let's
interestingly from them. I'll just say one thing. Like they interior, they like drastically increased the interior of both sides of the line, offense and defensive. The one thing for them in the back end is they still have JC Horn. If he's healthy, like he's a shutdown corner. But yeah, outside of that, they're gonna have to score. And if you're gonna have to score, like we want the guy that the wide receiver won on that offense. So yeah, 100% with you. Like just go buy Diontae, folks. Let's make it simple.
Yep, totally agree. Moving on, we're going to run through the rest of this pretty quickly because it gets ugly after this. Those were the fun conversations. Now we have tight end, guys who moved to different teams. Zack Ertz wasn't for the first time. Hayden Hurst wasn't for the first time. Colby Parkinson was for the first time. I think. Who cares, Jesse? Do you care? Who do you care about? Anybody?
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, it's a Chargers tight end. I'll give you that. Like you could go, I guess Parham's still there. I don't know, man. Like it's not pretty. The nice thing is Justin Herbert's the quarterback, but good Lord, there's a lot of freaking tight ends and I know I'm realizing talking about the Chargers when we're supposed to talk about the Rams, but like both of those tight ends, like we're talking about with Disley and Parkinson, they both would different situations. I don't know. Good luck, man. Just throw a dart on one of those back end tight ends because we've seen Stafford and we've seen Herbert particularly support those tight ends. So if you want to take a dart on them, sure. I just wouldn't expect much from them because they're not great. So you need touchdowns. You need touchdowns.
Well, but that's Hurst, right? So you got Hurst, Parm, and Disley over there in LA. Who do you like of those three?
I mean, you're making me pick one of these guys. I guess Hurst has been the target, but I'll take Parm because he's the big dude. I just expect Disley to block because he had a severe leg injury a few years ago that's trying to change the trajectory of his career where he hasn't really been able to earn targets. So, I don't think it's going to be him, unfortunately. So, I'll go with Hurst or God, I guess. I can't believe I just said that. But that's where we're at with their tight end situation this year.
Let's talk about Zack Ertz for a second. Zack Ertz can still do it if he can be healthy. We're huge Ben Sinnott guys from pre-draft. If you were with us back in February, Ben Sinnott was all we were talking about for a good 2 months leading up to the draft. That said, I still think Zack Ertz is the guy here as tight end, at least for the first few games, right? It doesn't mean that he's someone that you should be or can be relying on all season. But if you want to draft him late and try and move him, I have him stashed a few spots in dynasty rosters just to move him for a third-round pick if he gets a little bit of steam. I mean, this guy's old, but I really think Jaden Daniels is going to be someone who's going to surprise a ton of people. I don't believe in Cliff Kingsbury, but I believe in Jaden Daniels. And, outside of Terry McLaurin, they don't have anyone else there. Maybe Austin Eckler, if he can, get back to almost full health. But I'm thinking that whoever the tight end here is, maybe it's both of these guys. But I think Ertz has a little bit of value here, at least in the beginning of the season. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think Sinott's a good young tight end, but we saw this with McBride. We've seen this actually in Philadelphia with Zack Ertz too, and Dallas Goedert. Like he's good enough to block them and kind of show them away because tight end's the hardest position in the NFL to learn outside of quarterback because you're learning not just the offensive like running, you got to do the blocking on top of it too, and all the scheme and all of that stuff. So it takes them some time. And with Ertz, we saw this even last year, like before they were like, all right, screw it. Let's just go with Trey McBride. That Ertz was doing his thing, and I think it's going to be a similar situation. So if you want to attack this tight end room and redraft, just draft both of them. I think that's how you're likely to have to. You take two late shots, Ertz early, and then whenever Sinnott gets going and earns that role, then you can kind of move into Sinnott. But yeah, if you want to, flip Ertz early, go for it. I think with Jaden Daniels, he's going to need someone that's comfortable for him because outside of Terry McLaurin, I don't know. You trust in Luke McCaffrey? I don't trust Jahan Dotson. He was abysmal last year as far as you look at data and stuff like that. So maybe it happens for him. But yeah, I'm fine taking the shots because if you like Jaden Daniels, you should like his pass catching weapons. So yeah, target both those guys if you want in redraft. It's fine. And then in Dynasty, give Ben Sinnott now and just kind of just ride it out because it will get better over time.
Oh, 100%. I don't want to talk about these tight ends anymore. So let's move to the quarterbacks. There's only two real guys to talk about, but the first one, the main one, is Kirk Cousins. Let's have a quick discussion about Kirk Cousins. How do we feel about Kirk in Atlanta coming off of the Achilles injury? Is he, let me ask it this way, where does he fall in your dynasty rankings right now? And then what do you think he's going to be able to do for fantasy football this season?
Okay, let me see if I can find my dynasty rank because I have like 30 tabs open right now. All right, so here we go. So if it'll load, we have Kirk Cousins. Where do I have him? I have Kirk Cousins, QB 18, one spot ahead of Jared Goff. And you're like, ahead of Jared Goff? You're absolutely bananas. And I'm thinking, like, you know what? I want the guy who's been, it is a little hot takey, but whatever. Kirk Cousins has been my guy forever. So I know there's injury risks, but like this dude supports weapons better than anybody. They pass at an extremely high rate. If you look at Kirk Cousins' stats throughout his entire career, the teams pass at an extraordinarily high rate above expectation. You look at his pass attempts, 643, 560, like 600. Like he consistently is in the 550s up to 600. Last year, he was on a historic pace, but then he got injured because he was passing it 38 times a game. So when we look at his pass attempts, it was 38, 37, 35. Like that's what we want from our quarterbacks. He was pushing into the top 5 quarterbacks last year. Now, there is injury risk from it. I get it. What I'm looking to do is with a Goff or someone like that, I would look to get a plus on top and move back into the Cousins. Like that's how I would technically go. But so that's why I have him ranked in that way. But I'm not going to draft Kirk Cousins above Jared Goff because I'm not a crazy person.
Yeah.
But that's just how I treat my own rankings with that. So yeah. Where do you have Cousins at in your dynasty rankings? And then in redrafts, are you attacking him or are you like worried about the injury at all?
No, I'm not worried about the injury. I think I'm just worried a little bit about how he's going to adapt, really how the other players on that Atlanta team are going to adapt to him. I'm not worried about Kirk Cousins picking up a playbook. If all he's doing on the weekends is shopping at Kohl's, then we don't have anything to worry about Cousins getting in the books, right? So he's going to know that offense inside and out. He's a professional quarterback. Not worried about that at all. I'm not worried about the Achilles injury here. I don't think there's really going to be any sort of, fantasy fallout from that injury. I think it might take a couple of weeks for this team to get up to speed, and they're probably going to hammer Bijan Robinson early. And they don't forget about Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier is going to be a serviceable piece for the NFL team. I don't want anything to do with him in fantasy, unless you're thinking there might be an injury. He's one of those late round stashes, maybe. But Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, once this offense gets cooking, I mean, Kirk Cousins is going to have the weapons around him. And there's other guys in Mooney, in Rondale Moore, who, assuming they're utilized properly, can be good enough to take coverage away from Drake London and Kyle Pitts so that they're not doubled all the time and they can get open. Those are the two guys I want for fantasy, obviously Bijan. But I think Kirk Cousins is going to be a good QB2. I only have him as quarterback 19 right now in redraft, QB 20 in dynasty. So I'm not ultra high on him, but for me, it's not injury. It's just age and the fact that he's completely immobile now. If you thought Kirk Cousins was immobile before the Achilles injury, just wait till you see Kirk Cousins now. Thankfully, the Atlanta offensive line is good. Wait a minute. We'll see what happens to Kirk Cousins on that Atlanta offensive line. But interesting that they traded for Rondale Moore, and they have Darnell Mooney. Those guys can operate close to the line. We know Moore's ridiculous stat. What was it, like negative yards per target or something at 1 point, 2 years, 3 years under Kings?
Yeah, it's his usage is wild.
So they operate close to the line of scrimmage, which is the point. Early on, Kirk Cousins is going to be, he wants to feel safer. He wants to make sure he doesn't get absolutely destroyed against the likes of some of the crazier pass rushes in the league. So, he's going to be looking to get that ball out quick. Later on, when he feels comfortable, I think that's when you're going to see those normal Kirk Cousins games. But yeah, for me, it's not great for fantasy, but I still love him for supporting the weapons there.
Yeah, I think that's what he does. He does it better than anybody. He's had one of the few quarterbacks that supported multiple wide receiver ones in a season multiple times. So he's done this a few times in his career. So you're just basically taking Kyle Pitts, treating him as a wide receiver, treating him as a top 12 guy, and then that's how you do it with these guys. But yeah, I want the elite option in this offense because Kirk Cousins, him and Matthew Stafford, these guys that are immobile, like that Stafford too, that don't rush, they're the best bets at supporting multiple guys because they just continue to chuck it. Like you don't have pass steps coming out of the field. And they're hyper accurate. Like they do all of that stuff. So this is why we're big on Drake London. This is why we're big on Kyle Pitts. And then Bijan Robinson. I mean, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Like I want one of the best running backs in the NFL attached to Kirk Cousins offense because like magic can happen when that offense, and particularly with the Falcons defense. Like I don't think they're that good. So I think they have a ways to go. So this offense could be pushing 25, 30 points a game. And if you're giving me the running back one in that offense, like fire me up, baby. Like Bijan has the RB1 potential. I don't think he's gonna beat CMC, but like he's in the discussion of like that second tier of guys where it's like if it's not CMC, who's it gonna be? I think you throw Bijan's hat in the ring because he offers everything you could possibly want. It's just he just needs the workload. If he gets it, it's like it's wheels up, baby. So I'm excited for all the weapons with Kirk Cousins because that's what Kirk Cousins does, man. It's like that's why we want these guys.
I can't name another team. Maybe you can, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one who has the potential, and they won't all get it at the same time, but has the potential RB1, tight end 1, and wide receiver 1. These guys have the potential to become that. Can you name another team that has that wide receiver, tight end, and RB, all with the potential to be the number 1 overall fantasy producer at the position?
If you shifted it to like 2 wide receivers with if you were big on Cup, you could say the Rams. I will say if you want to get kind of crazy with it, you could go instead of wide receiver 1, you go RB1 and tight end 1. It's like the Chiefs with it's asking a lot for Pacheco. Like you're at like it's really hard to make this claim for anybody. But I mean, like it's you get the Jets, you get 2 of those guys. It's really hard to find all 3, right? So that's the whole thing. It's just like it's super rare. Yeah.
So, no.
A long-winded way of saying no, yes.
Let's wrap this up by talking about Justin Fields. Why not? Moving on from Chicago for the first time to Pittsburgh. Some people seem to think that Justin Fields can be a starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. I say hell no without injury to Russ Wilson. Listen, say what you will about the man. Russell Wilson is still miles ahead of Justin Fields as an NFL quarterback, and he's not running around and he's not crazy and flashy like Fields is. And I'm a Justin Fields fan for not only reality but for fantasy. I really wanted my Patriots to draft him years ago. Now we got the mayonnaise version and Drake May. But what are you thinking about Pittsburgh here? How does that quarterback room shake out? Does Justin Fields get a chance this season, or does he ever get a chance again to be a starting NFL quarterback?
All right, so Fields like pisses me off as far as it goes because he was my QB1 coming out ahead of Lawrence and all those guys. Like I had Fields QB1. The issue with Fields has been his processing. He's always been a slow processor, has not improved. So what are we coming out this week in Pittsburgh? Fields is struggling to process, and he's slow with his reads and passes. What that does is that just kills an offense because you're not sustaining drives. Like I get it if the rushing is there. The whole issue where people are like, oh, it's Anthony Richardson. Nah, dude, Anthony Richardson can actually process on time. That's the whole difference with Fields and him. So like I get it. It's just and like unless this improves, and it's year 4. So like how are we gonna improve it in year 4, right? We should have seen improvements in it, but like he's too late. He skips reads, he'll take off. Like it's really a lot of no-nos when you get a quarterback play. That's Justin Fields. And he's with the whole situation in Chicago, it made him hyper reliant on his rushing, which, by the way, he didn't really rush in college. Like, that's not what he did, right? You put him, you go from Ohio State to all those fancy, like, awesome wide receivers. Then you put him in Chicago with just a disaster of wide receiver room, disaster of offensive scheme. And this is how you ruin a player's career. So I think Fields basically is just like, if you can get out and sell him for Will Levis, I'm doing that immediately. I'll take the shot at Will Levis. Like, it sucks. I hate that I'm at this place with Fields, but I don't know. I'm just not interested, man. It's just unfortunate. Like, the only way it does work out is if Pittsburgh sucks and they're really bad and they try to tank and they bench Russ, they don't want to pay the rest of the contract, and then they play Fields, and then you're getting fantasy points, but, like, he's going to kill that offense. Like, the guys around him, like, you're not going to be able to support anybody. So that's the whole thing. So, yeah, another long-winded way of saying just no on Justin Fields. No, thank you.
Yeah. If you have high hopes for George Pickens, it's not going to happen with Justin Fields. The only person it's going to happen with is Russell Wilson. So, 100%. And, look, we got Arthur Smith back there. We saw what happened with a mobile quarterback with Arthur Smith last season. It was absolute trash. Justin Fields is a better talent than Desmond Ridder, but come on, we don't want to see that play out again here. We have a good defense in Pittsburgh. We have a great head coach who knows how to scheme them up. We have a serviceable quarterback room now in Pittsburgh. This can be a playoff contending team, but they can only be that by running the football and working off of play action with Russell Wilson, who also throws a great deep ball, who made Cortland Sutton fantasy viable last season. And now he's got a talent in George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth can work well underneath. If they can find a third guy, someone like Diontae Johnson, if they can find a third guy in Pittsburgh, someone like Diontae Johnson, move. This could actually be a good offense. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, but I don't know what people are doing, thinking that Justin Fields has much of a future. I agree with you. He's a stash on a couple of my teams. I would not mind getting out from under him right now. Yeah. I'm going to hold him because you can't drop him. This is a situation where it's like Trey Lance, right? You were kind of holding, waiting, holding out hope. And then, the team that drafted him just said they were done with him, shipped him off, and his value tanked, and you're left holding the bag on Lance. He's droppable now, right? Justin Fields is the same. The only difference is he's already been jettisoned by his previous team, and he's still held value because he put up a few 50-point fantasy games running all over the field. So if you can sell somebody on the idea that Justin Fields is starting this season, go out and get yourself a first. Highway robbery, try and get a first and move Fields and a second. Maybe it's possible if somebody still believes. You never know what can happen in your leagues and who is crazy enough to do it. But I think that's going to end this show for today. The old faces are in new places. We'll see if they stick around. We'll see if they have fantasy relevance this season. Some of them, yes, some of them, no. But anyway, we are the Fantasy Football Universe. Check us out on fantasyfootballuniverse.com. We are on X, of course. So with these taglines here, I get it.
I'm just going to point down. That's all right.
Yeah, looking like an idiot. We're on YouTube. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We are everywhere that you want to be for fantasy advice and insight. We got rookie profiles. We got draft stuff. We got Scott Fishbowl advice. Anything and everything happening. Also, every Sunday from here until the start of the season, we have giveaways. We have this weekend coming up, we have a Rainbow Bowl giveaway spot. We have a Warrior Bowl giveaway spot. I think maybe 2 spots coming up in the next couple of weeks here. So stay tuned to all of our channels. Check all of our stuff out. We are posting content daily. So for this guy, his name is Jesse. For me, my name is Jeremy. We will see you next time. And, as I look for the outro here, I just want to tell you that, have a great day.